like to welcome you here this evening to the Warren Centre's Innovation Lecture for 2013. Certainly it's a fantastic evening tonight, and the crowd is our largest crowd ever for the Innovation Lecture, so congratulations to all of you and thank you very much for being part of it. Before we begin tonight, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Nick Cernier, as the Executive Director of the Warren Centre, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all here tonight. And tonight we are lucky enough to have two exceptional engineers to speak to us. First of all, Professor Mary O'Kane, the New South Wales Chief Engineer and Scientist. I know formally her title is Chief Scientist and Engineer, but I'd like to refer to her as the Chief Engineer and Scientist. Mary will introduce Dr. Alex Zielinski, who of course is the guest speaker tonight.
We often, I think, well maybe this room doesn't forget, but lots of people forget, that an awful lot of Australia's innovation came out of defence, and in particular defence science. I mean, you can go on and on and on, I'm sure he will to some, no, Alex won't go on and on, he'll tell us very crisply. But, you know, things that I think about are things like the black box in aircraft, you know, having flown on a couple of very small planes today to go up to the Liverpool plane to look at coal seam gas. You know, the black box came out of Australia's defence, you know, even that alone, but that's just one of many, many examples. But the other thing that, again, because of that great CV, we often forget about Alex, is that he's also in the community. He, for example, sits on the council of the University of Wollongong, his alma mater, and is passionate about the Wollongong region and what might happen. And unless we bring innovation into our communities and bring our communities along with us in innovation, we don't get the sort of productive benefits from innovation that we should.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to talk to you about thinking big and making it happen. I'll try to cover the lessons that I've learned from a career in innovation and worked in many projects over the years. We'll try to discuss some of the insights gained and some notable successes, and also some disappointing setbacks. And tonight I'm going to really sort of focus on the last part of my career and what I've done. But if you look back at some of the things that I've done, I've been fairly mobile. Every 5 or 7 years I've moved on to do something else. So my old boss Jeff Garrett used to say that technology walks on two legs. I actually disagree in a sense. I say innovation walks on two legs. And what we must do is actually understand it's all about people, and the people have to come and go, and through coming and going you can actually harness many good ideas and get ideas exchange. If you have innovation which is a success based on idea, it really needs to be desirable to people. People need to want it. If people don't want it, it's hardly likely to be a successful idea. So you may have it, some people may think that technology is great, it's feasible, people want it, but it has to have a viable business model to go with it. And the interesting bits is the intersections that go between these three circles of people, technology and business. And the first one I call is functional innovation. So that's the thing that occurs between people and technology. I think we have a very poor culture and tolerance for failure. If you just look what's happening to the cricket team or our swimming team. And but this also translates into our business culture. Few leaders are given opportunity if they stumble. If we don't tolerate failure, it's unlikely that staff will take risks that are associated with being innovative. So I think that's something. We want to be innovative if we don't like failing. Well, I think the two are actually linked, and even great people like Jobs had great setbacks, even to take him through to the big successes that crowned his career. But going back, what is Seeing Machines? It's a computer vision company. It can actually track faces. So it's a technology which is a video camera looking back at a face. And one of the first things we realised after we started the company in 2000 was that the dot-com crash has happened. You wouldn't be able to raise any money, just an idea. We had to get a product out pretty quick, and we designed this product. So what the product did was able to look at a face and be able to, those sort of boxes on the face are showing where the features are being tracked, but what we could also do with those red eyes, with our lines, was actually see where the person's looking. So here it's being used in a motor vehicle, and it's one of the founders of the company, Jochen Heinzmann here, driving the car, and it could look through eyeglasses and also deal with various lighting situations. So here, for the first time, you could monitor a driver and know what they were doing. In other words, know where they're looking under all lighting conditions. So while this was going to be potentially an automotive product, automotive makers were very interested in understanding what did people do when they were driving their cars. We also used the Stanford model for the spin-off the company. Many Australian universities have a very unrealistic view of IP ownership and equity in companies and the control of the company. We said, let's do the Stanford model. This is proven, it works, and we were able to convince the university to do it. I didn't make a lot of friends at the time in doing that, but it was the right thing to do. The other important point, the ACT government and the federal government about 12 years ago had very interesting schemes. Now, a lot of them were, I think, in reaction to the .com, and they felt that we needed to support Australian companies at that time. We were able to actually tap into that. That was made a big difference. There's now over 40 people in Canberra working in seeing machines. And the commercial strategy was very much around early revenue. We didn't do what many tech companies do, which is we'll build the technology and then we'll wait until the revenue comes. So the idea was to get revenue, and that helped considerably. And obviously focused on customer and product, and that was one of the products I just showed you there. I believe with time and cost curves, you'll be able to integrate that in the end into automobiles, and it will be in the cars of the future. I'm sure it will be there. It may just take some time. So Wi-Fi. What you find in laptops, in your mobile phones, in your iPads, is that connection, the wireless connection. That was invented by CSIRO without a doubt. Working on some basic microelectronics to listen for very faint radio signals and be able to process fast Fourier transforms in real time gave an insight into how you could do high-speed wireless. And the CSIRO in the late 80s started that work and did it through the 90s, actually got the invention done, patented, got it into the standards, and then worked with universities and startups to make it a success. And in the 2000s, we actually saw the explosion of Wi-Fi. It actually went everywhere. Today, it's in over 5 billion products. But ultimately, we had very savvy business leaders who were prepared to say, you know what, we need to get our fair share of this revenue that other companies are making. And ultimately, put through a commercial strategy of licensing, but also litigating if the companies would not come to the party. And it required standing leadership from the board of CSIRO, at the time led by Catherine Livingston and by the CEO, Jeff Garrett, and then followed through by subsequently Dr. Megan Clark and John Stocker. And the important point was willingness to litigate. Look, I work at the DSTO. I want to tell you about some things there very, very quickly. I'm going to wrap it up. So, great organisation to work for, basically directed to the safeguarding of our nation. That was what motivated me, particularly if we can bring new technologies to bear on keeping our soldiers safe, particularly when they're on the ground in Afghanistan. One of the great things about joining DSTO is you actually get to do rocket science. And we are doing hypersonics research. This is where they're doing scramjet technology. This rocket is shot up 340 kilometres into space. We turn it around and then it comes back down. On the way down, somewhere between it's 20 and 30 kilometres above the Earth, it hits hypersonic speeds. At that point, we test all our scramjet technologies. And rather than trying to build a scramjet plane and trying to fly it, we're just shooting rockets up, turning them around and getting the speeds, hypersonic speeds, and then testing the engines. Very innovative way to do this. None of these projects I showed you could not have been done without great teamwork and collaboration. And lastly, I think one of the important points I've learned is you've got to really live and breathe performance management. Because if things aren't working, you've got to have the courage to change leaders, change the program, and say, this is not what we expected. And too often, sometimes we duck that. And performance management also means celebrating fantastic successes when they're done. And lastly, leadership does matter. Those first 6 points there are all about leadership. And as leaders, we've got an obligation to make things happen. So I'll finish there. So thank you very much, and I'll leave the final words to Larson. Okay, thank you.